from what I've seen of the series so far, I've had a great time with it. And it's a real action-packed show. So for both of you, I can imagine you had a lot of fun. And I wanted to start by asking actually about the fight scene in the bathroom on the train. And I was curious what you would say the biggest challenge with that was, because I know for me as a fan, I love those fight scenes that take place in those really confined settings.
Yeah, I mean, it is the confined set that is the hardest part. I mean, how do you put cameras in there? How do how do you use the space to the best of its advantages, being it so small? So I think that was really the fun challenge that we all attacked. And I think the credit, I think Don, you'd agree, would be the set. The set design was fantastic because they allowed us to be able to pull a little bit of a wall to be able to shoot. So, I mean, it was really just all departments working hand in hand to be able to allow us to really craft something fun in there and not be as kind of hand like handcuffed essentially with the way that we accomplished it. But it was a real it was a real good fun fight.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a good collaboration with the other departments and stuff. So when we design a sequence, it always helps like where they understand what we need. So we tell them like, okay, we're gonna be climbing on the walls, we're gonna do all this, we need to use this rail. So we need them to reinforce it and make it real, as opposed to just like a set deck where if we hit it or something, it's gonna destroy. I think the other biggest challenge, if James probably agree with me, was like the casting, right? Because most of the time they would get another actor to fight against him, and then we would have to find a double, and then we don't know what they can do and everything. And we were very lucky to get an awesome like stunt performer to play that role to fight against Richard. So that helped a lot, and Spencer Mulligan was the guy who played the guy in the suit with the glasses fighting him. He was he's an awesome performer, and he's a great actor too. So we were very lucky to have that. It's not very common.
That's
James
true.
knows, like
Yeah, that's true.
we're always fighting for it, and then sometimes when we get it, we're like, yes, it just makes
Yeah.
life so much easier. Yeah.
Amazing. And, I've got to highlight that entire train battle because it's such a great way to set the tone for the series and to kick the show off. And I'm curious what both of you enjoyed most about obviously working with Richard and Priyanka, particularly on that gunfight, because again, very edge of your seat kind of stuff.
I think it's just bringing what they're great at to the table. I think with the characters as well. I think with Mason Kane in that sequence, he's more of a bulldog. He's more of a street fighter. He's more of a straight, direct through, straightforward. Whereas Pri and playing Nadia, she's more agility, more circular. So I think what was fun was being able to do that fight on a very linear narrow path, but keeping your two heroes at the two opposite ends and having them to go and meet, which was, I don't know, I think is a lot of cool, fun little storytelling and foreshadowing that we hit in that little sequence. And it's just mayhem at the beginning, when you're doing gunfights in a small space, like it's absolute mayhem. So it was, I think, just playing to their strengths as characters in those little moments really, really helped until then, when they come together at the bar in their little kind of pseudo like Mr. and Mrs. Smith moment where when they're working together and they're not arguing and they're not on each other's nerves, they are an absolute deadly force.
Yeah, and then like piggybacking off what James said is it's also like it's fun because they're both very aggressive at tackling the action sequences, and it's just a human nature thing. There's some competitiveness outside of the actual work, but it kind of matches the character inside the show also because how they have a little competitive. They're a little bit competitive against each other, so it's always cool to have that, they don't want to be outshined, right? Yes. So they want to do their best part. He wants to do his best part. And, in the end, it just looks great. But then it's beautiful at the end of the sequence when, they actually are working together, so, passing the shotgun and helping each other out and stuff. It just makes it more fun as far as the characters go and everything too. But that's kind of up to them to bring it, like James and I, we can only fix the action sequences and stunts, the acting and everything, that's them, so
yeah, what they bring to the character helps us so much when we design the action. It allows us to really make it more individualized to the characters themselves and not so much as just kind of a gloss in of here's some fights. Like we like to put as much character in these little fight sequences as much as we can.
Yeah, and actually talking of character, that's a great point because Mason he is really interesting in the sense that obviously physically he remembers, particularly at the beginning, he remembers his training, but mentally, obviously his past is a blank and he almost doesn't know what he's capable of. So would you both say that changed your approach to the way the character handles action compared to what we initially see on the train at all?
Yeah, I mean, like it does with the way Mason is was more streets, like more of growing up in the rougher kind of environment where he had to fight for everything he had and everything he did. He has always so much to prove. Whereas Nadia on the flip side is completely different. So with Mason and then him when the backstop and going to Kyle, it's so interesting that the one thing that I feel is kept over is the determination. One thing, if you think about it, Kyle just wants to know the truth and he always wants to go forward. And I think that's one thing that David, our showrunner, really put so well into it was that there was this like that little characteristic with Richard and how always Kyle and Mason have this dogged determination. That was really fun to play with. So that was always a good fun base, even with Kyle, to have that. But then, of course, you got the physical abilities to react, but not so to act. So it makes it just I think it's a real fun for an actor, for Richard. I think it was really fun to explore that with the character.
Yeah, and then like James just said, the fun part about that also is like with the backstop, because we're constantly also talking about, okay, so this person loses their memory, but what else did they lose, right? So is the fight skill that they have, is that still with them? Is that second nature, like, or is it like riding a bicycle? You just know, or so these are questions that we're always constantly trying to ask, and this is where it becomes fun. It's just like when Mason Kane is going into the building the first time to steal back the case, or like Stanley Tucci's character is telling him, it's like, okay, don't smile, spies don't smile. And he's like, oh, okay. So things like that, it's just like, but you play on that, right? So you play on that, whether like, so is that the same thing with the action? So, so you start getting to see like how much of a fish out of water he is as Mason Kane and Kyle, right? So, that's where the fun part happens. And like James said, like David Wheel, he was able to really make that exciting,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know both of you've done so many superhero projects between you, and Citadel is quite a heightened world, but it's also very grounded. I guess maybe looking back at your projects, maybe Logan and Captain America come to mind in terms of that grounded action. But did your past work on superheroes really come into play a lot, both of you, when you were working on Citadel, would you say?
I think in everything we do, it does. And I think the one benefit that we have is Joe Russo. Joe loves this kind of action, like a little bit of superhero spice, essentially. So the one thing we do love is to keep it grounded. And the one thing I loved, and Don, I think you heard me chirp on about this so much, was in the script, David wrote that the action would be kind of like history of violence, like Viggo Mortensen style. So a little bit like using that superhero spice. Let's use a little bit less choreography and go for more grit, more just absolute dogged fights. Like with when you watch the restaurant sequence with Pre playing Charlie and Nadia getting absolutely ragdolled through those tables. Like it's playing more to like an actor's performance with ranges of determination as opposed to doing just straight bouts of choreography. So that's what I really enjoyed that the most was that history of violence style. How much can we do? How far can we push the actors? Like especially in the Hunter cabin, that sequence with Pre to do what she did in there was insanity.
And like what we were saying before is, I feel like every project we work on, even though it's not exactly the same, you're still always bringing elements that you learn from those projects back in. And the constant thing about each project, whether it's superheroes or guns or whatever, boxing, whatever it is always the feeling, right? And that's what we're always trying to figure out when we're choreographing or putting the sequence together, is like, what do we want the audience to feel, right? So for instance, like if you want to compare Citadel to Avengers, like Endgame, same thing, like when everyone's getting their butt kicked by Thanos and it looks like they're gonna be destroyed, and then all of a sudden Doctor Strange comes back with the other all the other superheroes, and you get that feeling, oh yes, and that's the kind of feeling that we want to get sometimes too. So like when Nadia's getting her butt kicked and Kyle's getting his butt kicked in the restaurant, all of a sudden you see her stand up with the syringe saying, oh shoot, she's back. Okay, now she's gonna kick some butt. So it's that same feeling, even though it's not the same kind of movie or same kind of show. We're always trying to get those feelings across, right? Because that's the one thing that's consistent with whatever you watch is the audience's feelings. Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys obviously you mentioned Priyanka a few times there, and that awesome restaurant scene, and she is such a highlight in this show and such a badass female character. And I know you've both worked closely with obviously actors like Scarlett Johansson and Anna de Armas, but what was this for both of you working with Priya like on this show? Because I know she's done some action work, but she really shines in that here, I thought.
Pri is dynamite. Pri is incredible. No matter what you throw at her, she can do. I mean, I've all of her background has led her to be an absolutely excellent action star. Like that's what I truly believe is that she can do everything we throw at her. If it's intricate choreography, if it's intricate footwork, it's she's got this just dogged, absolute driving force in her that she'll do everything. And honestly, it's she does it all with intensity, with great timing. I mean, I can't talk enough about her, how good she was with the action and doing what she did. Like she was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, she was awesome, and she picks up super quick. Like we'll have a sequence set up, and she's a very busy person too. She has to fly, like during this filming, she'll have to fly last minute to France or something like that to do whatever she's doing over there, and then she has to come back, and and when she comes back, we're like, oh, something changed. I say, oh, okay, no problem, I got this, and she'll pick it up with teacher, and she's totally gung ho, and sometimes we have to tell her, just okay, calm down a little bit, save yourself, you don't want to get killed, we got a lot more things to do. But yeah, her attitude's awesome. She learns quick, she moves well, looks awesome doing it, it's everything you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I know actors, often talk about they want to do their own stunts. Sometimes it's not always possible. So for you both, obviously, as stunt coordinators on a show like this, is it quite challenging for you to have to step in and tell, obviously, someone like Richard or Priyanka that, look, we need to now swap over and shake things up? Or is it just this collaboration just all the way through for you guys?
It's a pretty good collaboration, like absolutely for sure. Like they know that there's a line, like when we get doing wire work or essentially bigger stuff like that. But Pri and Richard will want to throw themselves on the ground in the fights, which is, I mean, it's fantastic for us, and as long as we go about it safely, it allows us to do more. But no, it's a good collaboration. They're really good with working with the stunt team and working with their doubles when needed to get what we need done.
Yeah. And it's like, like James said, they want to do everything. So it's like, and we know they can do it. And the thing is, at the same time, we just have to explain to them, it's like, okay, you got to do it more than once, right? So like, how about if you want to do it, let's do it where we really see your face. But if it's another angle and stuff, maybe we'll throw a double in there just to save it. You're still doing it, but just save yourself, and they get it. It's a good collaboration, like James said. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And just one final question for you guys. I know I've read a lot that No Country for Old Men was a big inspiration for Citadel. And I've read from Joe before. That's a big, for him and Anthony, that's a really big inspiration as their careers. So what could you maybe elaborate a little bit on how that played into the movie's action? Because I think a lot of people will see No Country for Old Men, Citadel, and might not make that connection necessarily. And it's a really interesting one, I think.
I think it was just from the script in the beginning when David wrote it to be like that, and talking with Joe and Ant from what they were expecting from these action sequences was less choreography, less kind of nitty fighting, and more performances, more struggles, more realism in a sense. You look at the Hunter cabbing piece where Priyanka's at such a disadvantage, and it's not throwing punches and 7-hit combos. It's struggling, trying to be intuitive, trying to use your environment, trying to do everything you can, and doing it with the actors, which is why it's so much fun. So I think that's what we always try. We try and point our action for the show in that direction. But then, like you're saying, there's that little superhero-ness that we inject in. Joe loves it more than anything. So we will always try to give him those moments, like Don was saying earlier, with Nadia rising and with these other little pieces. So it's again, that's the base that we use, but then there's always the sprinkle of a few other little things around it to get the blend for what Joe and David want.
Yeah, and then it's gritty too. So like for the other departments, is a good reference, because it's not just us on the film, right? It's his hair, his makeup, set deck, and all that stuff. So like the grittiness from it is like, they're not pristine looking. Her hair is not always perfect. She's bloody and her hair's a mess. They're ugly. Evo the hunter, he's all a mess, and it's just like, it brings that scary realism to it, that it's not Hollywood glam and all that. So it just brings another element to it.
Yeah, well, I know as a viewer, I love seeing all those different elements come together. And as a big fan of both of your work, The Grey Man and all your Marvel work as well, love seeing what you guys did here, because one action-packed, badass series. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you.
You.
Great chatting with you guys. Thank you.